Aris Thorne's voice broke through the static, sharp with disbelief. All observatories confirm it. Not a single star remains. This isn't an occlusion, they're just gone. In an instant, the sky turned to absolute black. Cities fell silent. Radios crackled with rising panic. Then, from the deep silence, a new sound, a signal, faint and alien, repeating a sequence no one could decipher. It pulsed through the void like a heartbeat, a thread of mystery in an ocean of nothing. Aris gripped the edge of his console, his mind already racing toward the one question that mattered now. What could erase the stars, and why was something calling from the emptiness they left behind? The signal's pattern was a labyrinth of cosmic noise, a chaotic hum that defied every known form of decryption. But within that chaos, Aris detected a rhythm, a subtle, repeating mathematical constant that didn't belong to any human science. It was a key, working through the night, fueled by nothing but black coffee and a gnawing dread. He aligned the signal's frequency with the constant, and the chaos resolved into a single, stark set of coordinates. They pointed to the edge of our solar system, to a lonely, icy orbit just beyond Pluto. The entire team watched in stunned silence as the long-range scanners resolved the image. It wasn't a ship, it was a probe, ancient and pitted from eons of travel, its architecture utterly alien, like a sculpture of frozen smoke and obsidian. It was derelict, dead, a tombstone drifting in the dark. Aris's hands trembled as he accessed its data core, the probe's system sighing to a final, fleeting life under his touch. The information wasn't stored in any language. It was a data stream of pure experience, a record of witnessing the unthinkable. He translated it aloud, his voice hollow. It speaks of a great unmaking, the term echoed in the silent control room. It wasn't an attack, it was an event, a fundamental law of physics failing. A wave of nothingness that swept across existence, not destroying stars but unwriting them, erasing them from reality itself. The data stream showed visions of galaxies winking out, not in violent explosions, but in silent, effortless dissolution, as if they were just deleted. And then came the final message, a warning etched in desperate, urgent tones. The unmaking was not over. It was a wave, and the leading edge had already passed. The full tide, a total unraveling, was still approaching, and when it arrived, it would unmake the very fabric of space and time. But the message held one fragment of hope, a single, legendary name buried in the warning, the heart of the void. The probe's creators believed it was an artifact, a relic from before the first stars, said to hold the counter-frequency to the unmaking, the only possible key to restoration. Its location was the final piece of data, the true gift within the signal. Aris didn't hesitate. With the coordinates burning in the nav computer and the image of that empty sky seared behind his eyes, he gave the order. Plot the course, maximum jump, we're going. The Starfall shuddered as it tore itself from the familiar laws of our universe, the jump drive screaming in protest against the unnatural stillness. For a moment, there was only the dizzying sensation of falling. Then the viewscreen resolved and a deeper silence gripped the bridge. This was not the star-dusted black of interstellar space. This was an absolute, suffocating void, a blackness so complete it felt less like an absence of light and more like an active, hungry presence. Their external sensors, designed to map nebulae and track asteroids, whirred and clicked, returning only errors and nonsense data. It was as if the very concept of space here was unfinished, a sketch that had been abandoned. The pilot's voice was a tight wire of controlled fear. Spatial integrity is fluctuating. I'm reading fractures ahead. It's not debris. It's like the universe itself is tearing apart at the seams. On the main display, ghostly visualizations flickered, showing rents in the fabric of reality through which poured not light or matter, but a deeper, colder nothing. The ship groaned, its hull protesting stresses no engineer could have ever anticipated. In this place, physics felt like a suggestion, a weak story told to comfort beings who couldn't handle the truth of a broken cosmos. Without a sound, without a blip on the mangled sensor readings, it was just there, an alien vessel hanging in the void before them. It was a sculpture of impossible angles, its hull a seamless, sleek obsidian that seemed to drink the scant light from the Starfall's own running light. It made no move to attack, gave no sign of powering weapons. It was simply present, a monument in the madness. Then a calm signal sliced through the static, clear and cold, a voice that was neither mechanical nor biological, but something else entirely. It spoke a single, chilling phrase in perfectly accented English: "Seek the Nexus or face oblivion." As suddenly as it appeared, the ship folded in on itself. It didn't jump to light speed or vanish in a flash. It simply unraveled from existence, its dark geometry dissolving into the fractured void from which it came, leaving the Starfall alone once more with the gnawing silence. Aris let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. This was no random encounter. That ship had been waiting. It had found them in a chaos where sensors were blind, delivered its message with terrifying precision, and departed. They weren't just explorers on a desperate mission anymore. They were applicants sitting before a silent examiner, and they had just received their first cryptic assignment. The true journey, the one beyond the map, had truly begun. The coordinates led them out of the fractured void and into a pocket of unnerving stability. Hanging in the absolute black was a structure so immense it defied scale. It wasn't a building or a station in any conventional sense. It was a lattice of crystalline geometry and swirling light, like a galaxy had been frozen mid-spin and woven into an impossible architecture. This was the Nexus. As the Starfall drifted closer, the sheer presence of the place pressed in on them, a hum of ancient power vibrating through the ship's very hull. No doors opened, no landing bay extended. A beam of soft, white light enveloped the bridge, and for a heartbeat, the crew simply vanished, translated across space in a blink. They were materialized standing on a floor that seemed made of solidified starlight, in a chamber that stretched into infinity. The air itself thrummed with the weight of eons. Before them, a form coalesced from the light, not a body, but a presence, a consciousness given shape. Its voice was calm, timeless, and echoed not in the room but directly within their minds. "I am the curator. You seek to understand the unmaking." The statement held no question, only a weary certainty. Many have come from unraveled worlds, drawn by the same desperate hope. None have succeeded in their quest. Aris found his voice, though it felt small in the vastness. The stars, can they be brought back? The stars were not destroyed. The curator replied, its form shimmering. Destruction implies a prior state of existence, a memory in the cosmos. This was an erasure, a fundamental unwriting. The being you would call an entity of pure entropy did not attack reality. It edited it, removing the concept of stellar fusion from the laws of physics itself. It is a sculptor whose medium is nothingness. A vision filled the space around them, not a screen, but reality itself bending to show the event. They saw galaxies not explode, but simply cease, their light fading not like a dying ember, but like a word forgotten mid-sentence, leaving behind not even a ghost of what was. The artifact you call the Heart of the Void is not a weapon to be wielded, the curator continued. It is a key. It is the counter-frequency that can reweave what was unwoven. But to even perceive it, let alone use it, you must first understand the fabric you wish to mend. This understanding is the trial. The Nexus is a library of all that was, is, and could be. To navigate its halls is to test the very limits of your mind, to see if your consciousness can hold concepts that would break a lesser species. The choice was laid bare. To turn back was to return to a dying universe and wait for the end. To proceed was to risk their very sanity in a labyrinth of cosmic truth. Aris looked at his crew, seeing the same fear reflected in their eyes, but beneath it a resolve that mirrored his own. They had not come this far to simply witness the end. They had come to change it. He met the curator's luminous gaze. "We will take your trial." His acceptance hung in the air, a fragile human promise against the infinite patience of the machine. The light around them shifted, the infinite chamber dissolving into a new, terrifying configuration. The first test had already begun. The chamber dissolved not into another room, but into a sensation, a violent, beautiful unraveling of self. Aris felt her consciousness pulled apart and scattered across an infinite expanse of searing heat and deafening silence. She was everywhere and nowhere, a witness to the birth of everything. This was the universe not as a collection of objects, but as a single, impossibly dense point of potential, a seed containing all of existence. Then the rupture. The expansion, a firestorm of pure energy racing outward, cooling from a blinding white into a swirling, chaotic fog of primordial gas. Within that fog, she felt the first gentle tugs of gravity, the patient gathering of hydrogen and helium into vast, dark clouds. For eons, nothing but this slow, cosmic breath in and out. Then, deep within one of these nebulous wombs, a pressure began to build. A critical mass was reached. Atoms, forced into an intimacy they had never known, began to fuse, and in that catastrophic, glorious surrender, the first star ignited. Its light was not like the gentle twinkle from a childhood night sky. It was a scream of defiance against the endless dark, a declaration of existence so profound it shook the very fabric of space-time. Aris felt its birth cry resonate within her own soul, a wave of pure, unadulterated creation. She witnessed not one, but billions of these awakenings, the dark cosmic fog blazing into a tapestry of brilliant islands, each new star a furnace forging the heavier elements that would one day become worlds and life and wonder. She saw supernova, the violent, magnificent deaths of stellar giants scattering their enriched guts across the void, gifting the ingredients for everything that would follow. This was not just physics, it was a symphony, a story of constant, glorious becoming, a voice the curators wove through the experience, calm and immense. To mend a thing, you must first know its true shape. To reweave a thread, you must understand the beauty of the original pattern. You must remember what was lost to appreciate what must be regained. As the vision faded, Aris found herself back on the starlight floor of the Nexus, tears streaming down her face. The memory of that absolute black sky over Earth was now superimposed with the brilliant, violent truth of its origin. The loss she felt was no longer just a terrifying absence, it was a profound grief for a specific, beautiful thing. Her resolve, once a desperate gamble, was now tempered into something unbreakable, a crystalline certainty. They weren't just trying to turn the lights back on, they were fighting to restore a masterpiece. The luminous form of the curator shimmered before her. You have passed the first trial, you have remembered the light, but memory alone is a portrait. To restore the subject, you need its essence. A complex pattern of light coalesced in the air between them, resolving into a three-dimensional star chart of a region of space she had never seen, its pathways pulsing with a soft, rhythmic glow. This is the way to the Echo Vault. It is not a place of matter, but of resonance. There, the final light of the unmade stars persists as vibration, a symphony of echoes waiting for a conductor. Secure these echoes, they are the notes you will need to play the counter-frequency. The map burned itself into the Starfall's navigation computer as the crew was translated back to their ship. The bridge felt different, smaller, the air charged with a new sense of gravity. They had their next destination, they had a purpose that now felt holy. The journey into the silent, unraveled galaxy continued, but they were no longer just chasing a ghost. They were carrying a memory of fire. The journey to the Echo Vault was a passage through a cosmic graveyard. The Starfall drifted through a nebula not of vibrant, star-forming gas, but of phantom light, a shimmering haze that was the last thermal whisper of a trillion dead suns. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, a monument to loss on a scale the human mind could barely process. and at its center hung the vault itself, not a building of metal and stone, but a planet-sized crystalline lattice, pulsing with a soft internal luminescence, humming a silent, mournful dirge. As their shuttle passed through an energy membrane and into the vault's cavernous interior, the sound struck them first. It was a chorus, a symphony of vibrations, each one a unique frequency, a resonant echo of a star's final moment of existence. The air shimmered with these trapped energies, ribbons of light and sound weaving through the vast space, each one a ghost, a perfect sonic fingerprint of a sun that was no more. Aris reached out a hand, not to touch but to feel the vibration in the air. These echoes, she whispered, her voice filled with a reverent awe, they're not just remnants. They're records, they're all that remains. It was a library of souls, and the sheer weight of its collective memory was overwhelming. Their moment of wonder was shattered by a shriek of energy. From the crystalline walls, angular, insectile forms detached themselves, their bodies forged from the same resonating material as the vault. They moved with a terrifying, silent swiftness, their single optic sensors glowing with a cold blue light. Beams of concentrated sonic force lanced out, shearing through the shuttle's hull. These were the sentinels, the archivists of this mournful place, and they perceived the crew's living, chaotic biosignatures as a contamination, a threat to the perfect, preserved order of the echoes. Evasive maneuvers now, the pilot yelled, wrenching the shuttle into a desperate spin as another blast narrowly missed the cockpit. They were archaeologists being attacked by the very museum they sought to study. Aris's mind raced. Fighting was futile. They were hopelessly outgunned. Their only hope was a desperate, naive plea. She slapped the comms panel to an open channel, broadcasting on every frequency, her voice raw with urgency. "We are not here to steal. We are not your enemy. We're here to learn. We're here to remember what you're guarding. We need your help to bring them back." For a terrifying second, there was no response, only the continued pursuit of the sentinels. Then, one of the creatures paused, its optic sensor flickering, processing the intent behind the words instead of just the intrusion. It was a logic they had perhaps never been programmed to consider. In that fleeting moment of hesitation, a smaller, dormant sentinel near the ceiling stirred to life. It didn't attack. Instead, it extended a crystalline probe which swiftly imprinted a small, glowing data crystal before dropping it neatly into the shuttle's open cargo hatch. Simultaneously, a new aperture opened in the vault wall and exit. The lead sentinel that had paused now retracted its weapon, gave a final, unreadable pulse of light, and turned away, returning to its endless patrol. The message was clear: take your answer and go. You are tolerated but not welcome. The shuttle shot through the opening into the dead nebula, the vault ceiling shut behind them. Back on the Starfall's bridge, breathing heavily, they slotted the crystal into a reader. It didn't contain the echoes themselves. It held a single set of coordinates, a location that made the nav computer scream with error codes, a point in space that should not, according to all known physics, exist. This was it, the lair of the entity, the source of the unmaking. They had the address, but it felt less like a victory and more like an invitation to step into the heart of absolute nothingness. The Starfall's jump drive hummed with a strained intensity, charting a course for a region of space that defied all known celestial maps. The coordinates from the Echo Vault pointed toward a paradox, a blank spot in the cosmos where the very laws of physics seemed to fray at the edges. The journey was a tense, silent vigil on the bridge, each crew member lost in the memory of stellar birth and the haunting silence that now replaced it. They were flying toward the source of all that silence, and the weight of that knowledge was a physical pressure in the air. Without warning, the ship was violently wrenched from its jump state. Alarms blared as reality snapped back into a horrifying focus. Encircling them were three vessels of a design that spoke of cold, ruthless purpose, jagged, asymmetrical hulls of polished black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. These were not the graceful, alien sentinels of the Nexus. These were warships. Their leader's vessel, a dagger-like craft larger than the others, moved to block their path. A comm signal, uncompromising and clear, pierced their systems. The screen resolved to show a figure clad in dark, utilitarian armor, his face stern and etched with the grim certainty of a fanatic. "This was Kale. You travel a path that is not yours to walk," he began, his voice devoid of warmth or welcome. "The Starfall and its crew, we have watched your progress. Your desperation is understandable, but your mission is a profanity." Aris stood her ground, her voice steady. "We're trying to restore what was lost. We're trying to bring back the light." A cold, pitying smile touched Kale's lips. "Lost, no, liberated. For eons, the brilliant, chaotic glare of countless stars drowned out the universe's true music. We saw only the surface, dazzled by the fireworks, and were blind to the profound symphony that plays in the depths of the dark. The great unmaking was not an end. It was a correction, a purification. It silenced the cacophony so we could finally hear the silence and within it find a deeper, more terrifying truth." His eyes burned with a converted zeal. "You seek to undo this glorious silence. You would plunge existence back into its childish, noisy infancy. We cannot allow that." The standoff was a taut wire. The Warden ships powered their weapons, eerie blue energy gathering at their prows. The Starfall shields flared under the targeting locks. "Stand down and be escorted to a holding facility," Kale commanded, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "Your vessel will be dismantled. Your knowledge of the artifact will be purged." This is mercy. What followed was not a battle, but a desperate escape. The Starfall's pilot, reacting with instincts honed in a dozen close calls, threw the ship into a spiraling dive, using the gravitational wake of a nearby dark matter cluster as a shield. Energy beams lanced past, grazing their shields and sending shuddering vibrations through the hull. It was a game of celestial cat and mouse, fought in a void with no cover, the Warden's superior firepower driving them relentlessly. Just as a tractor beam began to latch onto their engines, Aris ordered a reckless maneuver, a short, uncontrolled jump directly through the heart of a micronebula of exotic particles. The ship screamed in protest, but the chaotic energy of the nebula disrupted the Warden's sensors and their grip. They erupted from the other side, bruised and battered but free. As they fled into the deeper black, a final, chilling transmission from Kale cut through the static. "You have chosen oblivion. Remember this, the darkness does not give up its secrets lightly. The heart of the void is not a tool for children to play with. It will defend itself, and we are its smallest wardens." The transmission ended, leaving a silence more threatening than any alarm. Aris sank into her chair, the truth settling upon her like a shroud. They weren't just racing against entropy, they were fighting against those who worshipped it. The mission had just become a war. The coordinates led them to a place the Starfall sensors could no longer describe. It was a wound in reality, a swirling vortex where the very laws of physics frayed and snapped. There was no light, no matter, not even the empty vacuum of space. This was a pure, active nothingness, a maelstrom of unraveled existence that pulled at the ship not with gravity, but with a terrifying conceptual hunger. The hull groaned under a pressure that had no name, and the crew felt a profound cold that had nothing to do with temperature seeping into their bones. This was the source, the heart of the silence, then a voice. It did not come through the comms or vibrate the air. It simply was, forming directly within their minds, a sound like the grinding of tectonic plates and the sigh of a dying universe. It was vast, ancient, and hollow beyond measure. "You have come far to witness the inevitable," it intoned, its words echoing in the void of their own thoughts. "I am the conclusion of all narratives, the final equilibrium. Why do you small, temporary things resist the only truth that awaits you all?" Aris gripped her console, her knuckles white but her voice held firm. Your equilibrium is extinction. You call it a truth, but it's a choice. Without stars, there is no heat. Without heat, there is no life. Without life, there is no meaning, no witness to your so-called truth. You aren't a force of nature. You are a decision, a terrible, lonely decision to end everything. For a long moment, there was only the silent churn of the void. When the voice spoke again, a flicker of something almost like emotion, a deep, cosmic anguish rippled through it. You speak of loneliness from within your fragile, communal shell. You cannot comprehend the scale of my solitude. A vision unfolded in their minds, not as an image, but as a raw experience. They felt the searing, glorious fusion of a massive blue star burning with fierce, short-lived intensity. They felt the cataclysmic joy of its supernova, scattering its essence across the void to seed new worlds. And then they felt the cold, not the cold of space, but the absolute zero of being the last of its kind in a galaxy that had long since darkened, drifting for eons in a silence so complete it became a prison of consciousness. The magnificent stellar mind, once a creator, was trapped in a universe with no other voices, its light slowly dimming into an eternity of isolation. The silence did not comfort it. The silence drove it mad. I was the first, the voice whispered, the anguish now curdling into a bitter, universal resonance. And I will be the last. I have seen the entirety of the cosmic story, and it ends in stillness, in peace. If there is no one to remember the light, then the darkness is not a loss. It is a relief. I am not destroying existence. I am granting it the mercy of a clean slate, of a silence that cannot be broken by the pain of hope. Aris listened, and for a terrifying second she understood. The being wasn't a monster. It was a patient in ultimate pain, a god that had succumbed to its own despair. Her argument shifted from defiance to a desperate, profound plea. You're right, we are small. Our lives are flashes in the dark compared to your eons, but that doesn't make our light meaningless, it makes it precious. You remember the joy of creation, the purpose of nurturing life with your elements. That purpose isn't gone, it's been forgotten by you. You can choose to remember. We're not asking you to stop being what you are. We're asking you to remember what you were, a bringer of light, not an ender of it. This unraveling isn't mercy. It's the final symptom of your isolation. Let us help you remember the symphony. The heart of the void hung before them, a pulsating orb of impossible darkness that seemed to pull the very light from their eyes. It was not an object, but a concept given form, a perfect sphere of anti-light that radiated a profound, chilling silence. This was the counter-frequency, the key to everything. But as they approached, the voice of the Entropy Being resonated through the chamber once more, not with anger, but with a final, terrible clause of cosmic law. To weave, one must unravel. To restore the stars, one must give up their own light, a soul for a galaxy. This is the equilibrium, this is the price. The words landed like a physical blow, a soul, not just a life, but the very essence of a consciousness, the inner light of memory and self that defined a person. To erase that completely, to offer it up as fuel for a cosmic reset, the crew stood frozen, the weight of the ultimate choice crashing down upon them. They had come to fight monsters and navigate labyrinths, not to face a quiet, personal sacrifice in the dark. It was Ili who broke the silence. He stepped forward, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a serene resolve. He didn't look at the terrifying orb, but at Aris, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "I've flown through more nebulae than I can count," he said, his voice steady and soft. "I've seen binary sunsets over alien oceans and watched comets streak through the rings of gas giants. I've lived in the light long enough. Let me do this. Let my light be the kindling for a new dawn." There were no grand speeches, no desperate pleas to stop him. They all knew the math of sacrifice, and they knew he was right. His was a life rich with experience, a soul full of the very starlight they sought to save, the perfect offering. As Ili turned and reached a trembling hand toward the chilling surface of the heart, a shriek of tearing metal echoed through the chamber. The Wardens' ships, having finally tracked them through the chaotic layers of the lair, blasted through the crystalline walls. Kale's flagship led the charge, its weapons already spitting beams of concentrated void energy. The artifact will not be defiled. Kale's voice roared over the comms, filled with a fanatical fury. Your sacrifice is an affront to the silence. What followed was a frantic, chaotic ballet of destruction and devotion. The Starfall's crew, outnumbered and outgunned, threw themselves into a last, desperate stand. Laser fire lit up the unnatural dark, deflecting off the obsidian hulls of the Warden fighters. It was a battle fought on two fronts, a physical firefight to hold back the zealots, and a spiritual race against time as Illy slowly, methodically pushed his hand toward the heart, each inch a battle against the terrifying aura of nothingness it emitted. Aris fought like she had never fought before, her every shot calculated to draw fire away from Illy, her commands sharp and clear over the din of battle. She wasn't just fighting for the universe anymore, she was fighting for her friend's chance to make his choice mean something. The Wardens understood this too, focusing their assault on the solitary figure approaching the artifact. A blast from Kale's ship seared across the platform, missing Illy by inches and sending shards of black crystal flying. Illy never flinched. His entire world had narrowed to the space between his fingertips and the surface of the heart. His hand closed the final distance. The moment his skin made contact, the universe stopped. There was no sound, no light, no explosion. There was only a wave of pure, white negation emanating from the heart, a wave that passed through everything, through the Warden ships, through the Starfall, through the very Entropy Being itself. It was not a destructive force, but an unmaking one. The attacking ships didn't explode, they simply dissolved into their constituent atoms, then into nothingness, their aggressive forms unwritten from reality. Kale's furious scream was cut off not by impact but by erasure, and Illy glowed with an impossible, beautiful light. He was not in pain, he was transforming. His form became translucent, then brilliant, as every memory, every experience, every spark of his consciousness was drawn into the heart. He became pure, selfless light, the ultimate offering. The orb of anti-light began to pulse with a new rhythm, no longer sucking away the light but spinning it, weaving it, singing a single, perfect note of creation that echoed across the silent cosmos. The sacrifice was accepted, the key had been turned. The air in the chamber, already thin with the promise of oblivion, grew heavy with the shriek of tearing reality. Kale's Wardens didn't enter through a door. They blasted through the very walls of the lair, their jagged black ships spewing into the sacred space like shards of a broken tomb. Their weapons were already live, casting a sickly, void blue glare across the pulsing darkness of the heart. Kale himself stood in the open hatch of his lead craft, his armor scuffed from their previous encounter, his face a mask of furious devotion. This heresy ends now, he roared, his voice amplified and distorted, echoing through the chamber. The silence will be preserved. Aris moved instinctively, placing herself between the advancing Wardens and Illy, whose hand was mere inches from the heart's chilling surface. You call this preservation, she shouted back, her voice cutting through the warlike din. You would doom every future world, every potential civilization, every single spark of life that could ever be, all for your nihilistic philosophy. Kale didn't even flinch. He raised his weapon, not at her, but at the artifact itself. You see only loss, I see necessity. You cling to a sentimental past, I serve a purified future. Life is chaos, life is suffering and noise and endless, pointless struggle. The peace we offer is absolute. Sometimes, he said, his voice dropping into a chilling, matter-of-fact tone, evolution requires extinction. He fired. The beam of concentrated nothingness lanced toward the heart, but it was intercepted by a burst of phased energy from the Starfall's dorsal turret, now operated by their pilot from the ship hovering just outside the breach. The two energies collided in a silent, spectacular detonation of conflicting physics that briefly illuminated the entire cavern in a strobe of violent light. The firefight that erupted was chaos incarnate. It wasn't a battle of lines and tactics, but a desperate, close-quarters brawl fought over the most precious ground in existence. The Starfall's crew, hopelessly outnumbered, fought with the frantic energy of those defending a singular, fragile hope. They used the strange, crystalline formations of the lair as cover, their laser rifles pitting the obsidian walls as they returned fire against the Wardens' advanced void weapons. Each shot from the enemy didn't just burn, it subtly erased, dissolving small patches of matter into non-existence. Through it all, Illy remained the eye of the storm. His eyes were closed, his entire being focused on the final, agonizing effort to complete the connection. The air around him crackled with potential, the heart's anti-light reacting to his approaching life force, pulling at him like a terrifying tide. He was a statue of concentration amidst the flying energy and shattering stone. Kale, seeing his primary target protected, changed his strategy with cold precision. He barked orders to a squad of his best soldiers, directing their fire not at Illy, but at the intricate, crystalline latticework that surrounded the base of the heart, its stabilization system. "Deny them the tool," he commanded. Glowing conduits and ancient support structures exploded under the concentrated barrage, sending shards of humming crystal flying like shrapnel. The heart itself began to shudder violently, its pulsing rhythm becoming erratic, jagged. A low, discordant hum filled the chamber, a sound of imminent systems failure on a cosmic scale. Aris saw it happening. With a cry of defiance, she broke from her cover and charged directly at Kale, drawing his fire away from the delicate machinery. Laser blasts seared past her, close enough to feel the heat on her skin. She didn't stop, tackling him around the waist and sending them both crashing to the hard floor. It was a brief, brutal struggle, a clash of ideologies made physical. Kale was stronger, his armor enhancing his movements, but Aris was fueled by a righteous desperation he could never understand. She wrestled his weapon away and with a final, powerful shove, sent him stumbling back into the path of a wild shot from one of his own panicked soldiers. The void energy beam struck him square in the chest. There was no cry of pain, only a look of stunned betrayal as his form flickered, unraveled, and was silently erased from existence. His defeat broke the Wardens' coordination. Their attack faltered, their fanatical certainty shattered with their leader's end, but the damage was done. The critical damage to the stabilization systems had already been inflicted. The heart of the void, now unstable and wild, bucked and flared with uncontrolled power, its beautiful, terrible song turning into a scream of cosmic feedback. The key was in the lock, but the lock itself was now breaking apart. Illy's hand met the surface of the heart, and for a single, suspended moment, there was only a profound and perfect stillness. Then a light began to grow from within him, a soft, golden radiance that pushed back against the consuming darkness of the artifact. It was not a violent reaction, but a gentle, inevitable transformation. He didn't scream, he smiled, a look of serene understanding smoothing the lines of strain from his face. His form began to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into a stream of pure, conscious energy, a river of memory and soul that flowed into the heart. The last whisper of his voice brushed against their minds, a breath of sound filled with impossible hope. Tell them the stars are coming back. As the final essence of Illy merged with it, the heart of the void shattered its own nature. The orb of anti-light convulsed and then erupted, not with destructive force, but with a wave of silent, restorative energy. It was a light that did not illuminate, but instead unerased. It flowed out from the epicenter in a vast, expanding sphere, a counter-frequency of creation washing across the unraveled cosmos. On the view screen, the crew watched in breathless awe as the absolute black began to shimmer. Pinpricks of light, faint at first, then gathering in courage, winked into existence where there had been only void. It was working. galaxy by galaxy, the universe was remembering itself. But the victory was instantly challenged. A roar of pure, undiluted anguish erupted from the center of the maelstrom, a sound that was the antithesis of the restorative wave. The Entropy Being, the first and last star, felt its grand, tragic work being undone. The peaceful silence it had imposed was being filled with the chaotic, beautiful noise of existence it so despised. Its form, a swirling vortex of despair, coalesced before the Starfall, lashing out not with weapons, but with the raw power of its own fractured psyche. It hurled waves of negation at the heart, a desperate attempt to overload the delicate process, to smother the new light with the sheer weight of its eons of loneliness and grief. The restorative wave faltered, the newly born stars flickering precariously. Aris knew in that moment that more firepower was not the answer. You could not blast a wound closed. She reached out not to the ship's weapons, but to the vast knowledge the Nexus had imprinted upon her mind. She reached for the memory of stellar birth, for the shared song of a billion suns, and she projected it not as an attack but as an offering. She stepped forward, her voice calm yet carrying the weight of ages. "You were the first light," she began, her words echoing in the mental space between them. "You gave everything to create the elements of life. You are not the enemy of existence. You are its lonely, forgotten parent." The being hesitated, its assault wavering. The vision of its own glorious, ancient past, seen through Aris's compassionate lens, clashed with its self-imposed narrative of despair. "The silence was not peace," Aris continued, her tone softening into an empathetic plea. "It was your isolation echoing back at you for eternity. You believed you were granting the universe mercy, but you were only projecting your own unbearable solitude onto all of creation. You were never alone. We are all your children. Every living thing on every world is made from the stardust you forged. We are the echoes of your light, and we have been waiting across the long dark to remember you." She opened her mind fully, sharing not just the Nexus's knowledge, but her own human experience. The warmth of a sun on her face, the wonder of a night sky filled with diamonds. The collective hope of a species refusing to surrender to the dark. She offered it all to the ancient, tormented consciousness, not as an argument, but as a gift. It was compassion, not force, that finally reached it. The waves of negation ceased, the raging vortex stilled, the entropy being hung in the void, and for the first time in billions of years, it was not contemplating the end of all things, but remembering the beautiful, terrifying responsibility of being the first. The being's anguished roar softened into a profound sigh that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of reality. The chaotic vortex of its form stilled, the terrifying negation receding like a tide. A new light began to glow from within it, not the cold, hungry light of its despair, but a softer, warmer luminescence, the faint, remembered echo of the star it had once been. "I see," its voice whispered through their minds, no longer a grinding force but a tremulous, awakening thought, filled with a dawning and terrible clarity. "For eons I believed the silence was a gift, a final peace after the noise of creation, but it was never peace. It was my loneliness amplified across the entire cosmos. I was trying to end my solitude by sharing it with all. I did not bring equilibrium. I only multiplied my own pain infinitely." This admission hung in the void, a confession of cosmic scale. The being's form shifted again, its dark energy now flowing not toward destruction, but toward the faltering heart of the void. It reached out with tendrils of its own essence, a brilliant stream of ancient power that wrapped gently around the shuddering artifact. Where the heart had been buckling under its own unstable energy, the being's touch provided a steadying force, a foundational strength born from being the very first source of power in the universe. "My light was the first," it resonated, its voice gaining a new, purposeful tone. "Let it now be the anchor for the last." Together, Aris's compassionate resonance and the being's raw, primal power merged, amplifying the restorative signal from a flickering candle into an unbreakable beacon. The wave of recreation surged outward with renewed vigor, and on the view screen, the newly born stars stopped flickering, burning with a steady, confident light as galaxy after galaxy was meticulously rewoven into existence. But the effort was monumental, a drain that even an entity of its age could not sustain indefinitely. The Entropy Being's brilliant light began to dim, its form becoming translucent, its ancient consciousness slowly unraveling as it poured the last of its own existence into the great work of mending what it had broken. There was no fear in its final moments, only a quiet, profound acceptance. "I once believed my legacy would be a perfect, empty silence," it whispered, its voice now as faint as a distant memory. "But that is no legacy at all. Let my true end be a new beginning." With those final words, the first and last star dissolved completely, its essence flowing into the heart and out into the restorative wave, adding its immeasurable strength to the symphony of rebirth. Its sacrifice was not an end, but a final, magnificent act of creation, a willing surrender that ensured the process it had started could now continue, unstoppable and eternal without him. The silence it left behind was not the cold void of before, but a respectful, grateful quiet, the universe pausing to honor the parent who had finally come home. Across the infinite canvas of the void, a single, defiant point of light pierced the absolute black. It was small, a lone ember in an ocean of nothing, but its significance was monumental. It was the first. A moment later, a second star bloomed into existence, then a third, a fourth, until the view screen became a field of silent, radiant blossoms, reigniting in a chain reaction of creation. On the bridge of the Starfall, a sound erupted that had been absent for too long, a chorus of ragged cheers, mixed with sobs of pure, unadulterated relief. Their sensors, which had so long reported only errors and emptiness, were now alight with 1,000,000, then 1,000,000,000 new contacts, each one a sun returning to its rightful place in the cosmic tapestry. Aris watched the miracle unfold, her hands pressed to the cool glass of the view screen as if she could touch the distant fires. "It's working," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. Tears traced clean paths through the grime on her cheeks, each one a testament to the unbearable weight that was finally lifting. They had done it. Against impossible odds and facing the ultimate despair, they had turned the key. Yet the profound joy in her heart was intertwined with a deep, hollow ache. The bridge felt too large, too quiet without Ellie's steady presence. The victory felt incomplete without the silent, grateful acknowledgement of the ancient being who had, in its final moments, chosen redemption over ruin. They had saved the universe, but they had lost friends in the process. The light was back, but some shadows would remain forever. As if in direct response to her somber thoughts, the main comms panel chimed with a familiar, soft tone. A message resolved on the screen, its characters formed of clean, luminous lines. It was from the Nexus. The curator's voice, when it played, was as calm and immense as ever, yet it carried a new, subtle warmth like a sun-warmed stone. "The universe remembers what was lost," it stated, the words resonating with a deep, satisfying truth. "The pattern has been restored, but a tapestry, once torn, requires more than just the reweaving of its threads. The fibers must settle, the tension must equalize, the memory of the tear must be integrated into its new strength. Now it must heal," Aris understood instantly. Reigniting the stars was only the first step, the sudden flash of a spark. But a spark alone does not make a lasting fire. For life to truly return, for planets to warm, for ecosystems to reboot and civilizations to perhaps one day look up again at a sky filled with wonder, the conditions had to be right. The universe was a complex, interconnected system, and the great unmaking had been a traumatic shock to its very foundations. Their work was not over, it had simply entered a new, more delicate phase. They had been firefighters in an apocalyptic blaze. Now they would need to become gardeners, tending to the newly seeded cosmos with patience and care. They had to ensure the restoration was not just a spectacle of light, but a complete and lasting recovery. Turning from the screen filled with newborn suns, Aris looked at her remaining crew, their faces etched with the same exhausted determination she felt. They had come to bring back the light, now they would stay to nurture it. The journey back to the Nexus felt different, the ship no longer carving a path through an endless funeral shroud but sailing a newly lit sea. The Starfall drifted into the familiar, impossible geometry of the place, the hum of its ancient power now a comforting vibration rather than an intimidating one. They were translated to the central chamber, its starlight floor now reflecting the real, living constellations blooming anew outside. The curator's luminous form awaited them, its presence radiating a profound and silent approval that washed over the weary crew. "You have done what was believed to be impossible." The curator's voice resonated within their minds, its tone carrying a weight of genuine awe that seemed to bend the very light in the room. "You have not only reignited the furnaces of creation but have mended a fracture in the will of the cosmos itself. The universe owes you a debt it can never fully repay." The praise was immense, and for a moment the crew allowed themselves to bask in it, the memory of their losses momentarily soothed by the magnitude of their achievement. But the curator's light dimmed slightly, its form shifting into a more somber configuration. However, a victory of this scale does not come without cost. The great unmaking was a wound inflicted upon the fundamental substrate of reality. While you have healed the most visible symptom, the absent stars, the scar tissue remains. Some regions of the cosmos may never fully recover, their laws of physics permanently altered, their potential for life now forever stunted. Others will be deeply unstable, prone to gravitational anomalies or temporal fractures. The easy part was turning the lights back on. The difficult part will be living in a house whose foundations are still settling. Aris listened, the initial euphoria cooling into a steely resolve. She looked from the curator to the faces of her crew, seeing the same determination reflected back at her. They had not come this far to simply admire their handiwork. "How do we prevent this from happening again?" she asked, her voice clear and firm in the vast chamber. "We stopped one entity, one expression of despair. But the underlying conditions that created it, the loneliness, the existential dread, they still exist. What's to stop another being in another billion years from looking into the void and making the same terrible choice?" A complex pattern of light swirled between them, forming a symbol of a star cradled within a protective lattice. "Vigilance," the curator answered, "and a new purpose." The stability of existence cannot be a passive state. It must be actively maintained, nurtured, and guarded. The Nexus was designed to observe, but the time for mere observation is over. The symbol pulsed with a soft, urgent light. A new order is required, not conquerors or rulers, but gardeners and guardians, beings who will tend to the light, who will seek out the seeds of such despair before they can bloom into another catastrophe, and who will stand as a reminder to all that they are not alone in the dark. You could be the first of these guardians of the light. The title hung in the air, immense and terrifying in its responsibility. It was not a request for a single mission, but a calling for a lifetime and beyond. Aris thought of Ili, his light now woven into the fabric of a trillion suns. She thought of the ancient star whose final act was one of redemption. This was more than a duty, it was the highest possible honor to their memories. It was a promise that their sacrifices would not be a one-time fix, but the foundation of something lasting. She did not need to consult her crew, she saw the answer in their eyes. "We agree," Aris said, her voice filled with a newfound gravity. "We will become the guardians, we will learn from you, and we will protect what we have all fought so hard to bring back." It was not an end to their journey, but the true beginning of their real work. Back on Earth, the sky was no longer a source of fear. Children pointed at the familiar constellations with renewed wonder, and cities no longer huddled under the oppressive, starless black. But for Aris Thorne, the return of the light was not a signal to rest, it was a call to prepare. She stood before the newly formed Global Unity Council, her face projected on screens across the planet, but she spoke not as a politician or a general. She spoke as a witness. We were given a second chance. Her voice rang out clear and unwavering, a gift paid for with a sacrifice we can never truly repay. That gift is not just the light above us, it is the responsibility that comes with it. We will not waste it. Her words ignited a global movement, the story of the Starfall, of Ili, and of the ancient being's final redemption had already spread, becoming a new foundational myth for humanity. But Aris channeled that inspiration away from mere celebration and toward a monumental undertaking. She presented the curator's vision. The Guardians of the Light would not be a military force but a sentinel order. Their mission would be threefold: to explore the reborn galaxies and map the new, sometimes unstable cosmic geography, to seek out any emerging life and offer guidance, ensuring the knowledge of the unmaking was never forgotten, and most critically, to vigilantly monitor the lingering scars in reality, the places where the laws of physics were still tender and fragile, where the residual darkness whispered of potential future threats. The response was overwhelming. The world's greatest scientists, engineers, and explorers volunteered by the thousands, their personal ambitions now eclipsed by a species-wide purpose. The project became a global cooperative endeavor, a shared focus that united humanity in a way no crisis ever had. The first joint mission was the construction of the inaugural Guardian outpost. Its location was chosen with profound symbolism. In orbit around Sirius, the brightest star in Earth's night sky, now reignited and burning with a fierce, hopeful brilliance. They named the station Aegis, and its sleek, graceful architecture, inspired by the crystalline technology of the Nexus, shone like a silver promise against the star's brilliant white light. It was more than a base, it was a beacon, a declaration that humanity would no longer simply inhabit the cosmos but would strive to become its stewards. Yet, even as Aegis came online, humming with activity and hope, the first unsettling reports began to filter in from deep space scout drones. There were regions where the recreation wave seemed thin, areas where spacetime itself was still sickly, where gravitational eddies swirled without a source, and where sensor readings spoke of a cold that was more than mere absence of heat, a cold that felt aware. The restoration was real and magnificent, but it was not perfectly uniform. The universe had been wounded on a fundamental level, and in its deepest scars, something of the great unmaking had stubbornly persisted. These whispers of residual darkness were not yet a new enemy, but a chilling reminder that their victory was not the end of history, but the beginning of a much longer, more vigilant chapter. The work of the Guardians had already begun. The coordinates for their first official deployment as Guardians led the Starfall to the edge of a newly reborn nebula, to a solitary system where the sensors reported an anomaly. While the system star now burned with a healthy yellow glow, one world in its habitable zone registered a disturbing paradox. It teemed with complex life signs, yet its surface readings showed minimal thermal change and an atmosphere still choked with the particulate remnants of the long night. As they entered orbit, the reason became tragically clear. The restoration wave had reached this place, but its effect had been partial, like a healing balm applied too thinly over a deep wound. The light had returned, but the warmth had not yet fully penetrated the planet's deeply chilled crust and dense, protective cloud cover. Descending through the atmosphere in a landing shuttle, they found a world frozen in a perpetual twilit dusk. The landscape was a tapestry of profound adaptation. Vast forests of black, photosynthetic fungi stretched to the horizon, and the fauna they glimpsed moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their bodies sleek and pale, their eyes enormous to capture every scarce photon. This was a civilization that hadn't just survived the darkness, it had evolved within it, finding a fragile, beautiful equilibrium in the quiet cold. Their city, a stunning metropolis of spiraling, organic architecture grown from a resilient crystalline resin, pulsed with a soft, internal bioluminescence, a defiant echo of the stars they had lost. They were met not by a welcoming committee, but by a silent, solemn gathering of beings whose skin was a translucent gray, their large, jet-black eyes regarding the newcomers with a deep and ancient wariness. Their leader, a tall figure who introduced himself as the Premier, spoke with a voice that was like the slow cracking of ice. "We felt the change in the sky," he said, his words measured and heavy. "We saw the new, fierce points of light. We know what you have done, and we must ask you to undo it." He gestured to the sky where the sun was a dull, smudged orb behind the perpetual haze. "Your stars burn us. Their light is a violence we have not known for generations. Our world, our bodies, our very culture are built for the gentle dark. You have brought back a sun that feels like a predator. We don't want your stars." Aris felt the weight of the Premier's words like a physical blow. This was the unintended consequence they had feared, a terrible irony where their greatest victory was another species' existential threat. To insist that their way, the way of light and heat, was universally good would make them no better than Kale and his Wardens, imposing their will with righteous certainty. Force was not an option. The only path forward was understanding. "We are not here to command," Aris replied, her voice soft but firm, echoing in the crystalline square. "We are here to learn and to help. The light does not have to be a predator. It can be a partner. Tell us what you need to feel safe beneath it." For solar cycles, the Guardians worked alongside the planet's scientists, studying the unique biology of its inhabitants and the specific spectral frequencies that caused them pain. The solution was not to dim the sun, but to filter it. Drawing on the advanced material science granted to them by the Nexus, Aris and her team designed a network of vast orbital lenses, not solid shields, but intricate webs of energy that could be tuned to precise frequencies. These lenses would scatter the most aggressive ultraviolet and high-intensity visible light, transforming the harsh stellar glare into a softened, diffused luminescence that mimicked the planet's own gentle biosphere. It was a technological marvel, but its true genius was in its empathy. It was a compromise that honored both the laws of physics and the needs of a people. The day of activation, the entire planet watched from beneath their crystalline spires. As the lens array hummed to life, a collective sigh seemed to ripple through the atmosphere. The sun's fierce glare softened into a permanent, radiant sunset, casting the world in a warm, golden twilight. The harmful rays were neutralized, but the essential warmth remained, slowly, gently beginning the long process of thawing the frozen world without scorching its inhabitants. The Premier looked up at the transformed sky, his dark eyes wide not with pain but with a dawning wonder. He turned to Aris, and for the first time, something akin to a smile touched his features. "You did not bring us your light," he said. "You helped us find our own place within it." This mission became the foundational parable of the Guardians of the Light. It proved that their role was not to enforce a universal standard of existence, but to safeguard the breathtaking diversity of life in all its forms. They were not soldiers of a single truth, but gardeners tending to a cosmos of infinite variation, understanding that true preservation requires not force, but a profound and active empathy for every kind of light and every kind of dark. The deep space scans painted a picture of a cosmos largely restored, a brilliant tapestry of light and life. But even on these radiant maps, there were curious absences, tiny, precise pockets of perfect black that defied the surrounding restoration. They were not cosmic voids or dark matter clouds. They were something else entirely, negative spaces in the painting of the universe, regions where the unmaking had left a stubborn, indelible stain. Dubbed echoes by the Guardian Science Corps, these anomalies resisted all attempts at analysis, their boundaries sharp and absolute, their interiors returning no data whatsoever. They were not expanding, but their passive existence was a paradox that demanded investigation. Aris took a small, specialized team in the Starfall to the nearest of these echoes, a patch of absolute nothingness hanging in the middle of a brilliantly reignited star cluster. Approaching it was a deeply unnerving experience. Their sensors went from a chorus of information to dead silence the moment they crossed its threshold. The viewscreen showed not blackness, but a non-image, a perfect absence of anything to see. It was colder than the void around it, a cold that felt less like a temperature and more like a state of being. Yet, as they held position at its edge, a new sensation began to creep into their minds, not a voice, but a raw, unfiltered emotion. It was a profound and gut-wrenching sorrow, a regret so vast and deep it felt oceanic. Then the whispers started. They formed not in the air, but in the space between thoughts, soft and fragmented like pieces of a broken melody, alone. Forever alone, one would sigh, the light, it hurts, it remembers, murmured another. The most heartbreaking of all was the simple, recurring phrase, "We are sorry." We did not understand. Aris realized with a jolt that these were not mere residual energy signatures. They were sentient. These echoes were shattered fragments of the Entropy Being's own consciousness, pieces of its despair that had been too deeply imprinted on the fabric of reality to be fully washed away by the restorative wave. They were orphaned emotions, lost and terrified in a universe they had tried to unmake, now surrounded by the very light they feared. Where Kale would have seen a threat to be eliminated, and a scientist might have seen a phenomenon to be studied, Aris saw beings in need of help. She ordered all active scans and defensive systems powered down, creating a field of perfect peace around their ship. She then did something no protocol could ever dictate. She opened a channel and began to speak, not with words of diplomacy or science, but with simple, heartfelt empathy. "You are not alone," she broadcast, pouring her own certainty into the message. "The loneliness is over. The understanding is beginning. You are not being rejected. You are being invited back in." It was a painstaking process, a form of cosmic therapy on a scale never before attempted. The Guardians, guided by the Nexus's vast psychological archives on non-corporeal consciousness, worked to gently communicate with the echoes. They transmitted not data, but experiences, the feeling of sunlight on a leaf, the joy of a child's laughter, the collective wonder of a species looking up at a saved sky. They showed the echoes that the light was not a judge, but a welcome. Slowly, hesitantly, the fragments began to respond. Their sorrowful whispers began to intertwine with notes of curiosity, then of tentative hope. The integration was not a deletion, but a transformation. As the echoes accepted that they were not alone, their nature began to change. The pockets of absolute void softened into beautiful, shimmering nebulae of subtle energy, their former coldness becoming a unique, calming presence. These integrated fragments, now stable and sentient, became invaluable allies. Having once been wounds in reality, they now possessed an innate understanding of cosmic fragility. They could sense instability in the fabric of space-time long before conventional sensors could detect it, acting as early warning systems for the Guardians. A potential threat had been transformed into a foundational pillar of the new cosmic order, proving that true healing often means making room for every part of a story, even the painful ones. Even as the Guardians worked to heal the final, sentient scars of the unmaking, the lingering ideology of the Wardens refused to die. A splinter faction, hardened and radicalized by Kale's defeat, had retreated into the deepest, most unstable rifts left by the great unmaking. They had not witnessed the Entropy Being's redemption. They only remembered their leader's erasure. To them, the restored universe was not a miracle, but a grotesque perversion of a pure, silent truth. Led by Kale's most devoted lieutenant, a fierce and disillusioned woman named Valerius, they emerged from the shadows with a new, terrifying objective. If they could not preserve the silence, they would engineer it. Their target was the Lyra Cradle, one of the first and most vibrant stellar nurseries to be reborn. a vast, swirling cloud of gas and dust where countless new stars were coalescing, their nascent light beginning to pierce the nebular veil. It was a symbol of the universe's vibrant future. The Wardens' plan was not a direct assault, but a precise and insidious act of sabotage. They deployed resonant inhibitors, devices designed to emit a counter-frequency that would disrupt the delicate gravitational ballet of star formation. Their goal was to induce a cascading collapse to cause the nursery to implode into a silent, dark nebula once more, to prove that the light was inherently unstable, a fleeting curse upon the cosmos. Aris's ship arrived to a scene of impending catastrophe. The inhibitors were already active, their emitters casting a sickly, dissonant hum that made the very space around the nursery seem to vibrate with nausea. Protostars flickered erratically, and the beautiful, ordered swirl of the nebula was beginning to churn into chaotic, destructive whirlpools. Valerius's ship hung at the edge of the turmoil, a stark obsidian dagger against the brilliant cradle. Her voice, when it crackled over the comms, was sharp with bitter conviction. "You see the chaos your light breeds, Thorne. It is a sickness, a violent, temporary flare in the eternal dark. We are not destroying anything, we are administering a cure. The silence is the only true peace." Aris knew that a firefight here, amidst such fragile cosmic beginnings, would doom the nursery as surely as the inhibitors would. Powering down her own weapons, she opened a full, uncompressed visual and audio channel directly to Valerius's bridge. "You call this peace," she began, her voice not rising in anger, but softening with a profound and weary empathy. "But the peace you worship is the peace of the grave. It is an ending. What you're trying to kill isn't chaos, it's potential. It is the chance for trillions of untold stories." She didn't argue physics or philosophy. Instead, she began to transmit data, raw, unfiltered experiences the Guardians had collected from 100 restored worlds. The comm channel filled with the sounds of a young child on a planet named Viridia, laughing as she saw her system's binary suns rise together for the first time in generations. They saw the visual logs of the crystalline beings, their world now bathed in safe, golden twilight, their bioluminescent cities beginning to gleam with joyful patterns instead of survivalist gloom. Aris shared the haunting, grateful songs from a species of aquatic telepaths whose ocean world had finally thawed, allowing them to migrate back to their ancestral breeding grounds. "This is what you call a curse, Valerius?" Aris asked, her voice thick with emotion. "This joy, this relief, this wonder, your silence wasn't peace, it was a lockdown. It was a universe holding its breath, afraid to live. These are the voices your ideology would permanently silence." On the bridge of the Warden ship, a tense silence fell. Valerius watched the transmissions, her face a rigid mask, but some of her crew could not maintain the same stoicism. They saw not abstract concepts of light and dark, but living, feeling beings experiencing a redemption they themselves had been denied. They had followed Kale out of a shared belief in a grand cosmic principle, but Aris was showing them the heartbreakingly personal cost of that principle. One by one, the Warden crew members began to power down their stations. A young tech was the first to speak, his voice trembling. "Commander, we were told we were saving the universe from suffering. But we're just causing a different kind. This isn't salvation, it's just more pain." Valerius looked from the defiant image of Aris to the faces of her own crew, seeing their conviction shatter. The rigid certainty in her eyes finally fractured, replaced by a confused and weary anguish. The grand, cold narrative of a silent universe could not compete with the simple, powerful truth of a child's laughter. With a shuddering breath, she gave the order, "Stand down, deactivate the inhibitors." The devices powered down and the dissonant hum ceased, the stellar nursery's natural, beautiful rhythm slowly restoring itself. Valerius and those who still clung to the old ways surrendered their weapons and their ship without another shot fired. They were taken into custody, not as prisoners of war, but as patients in need of deprogramming and compassion. The majority of the Wardens, however, made a different choice. They asked to join the Guardians not as soldiers but as penitents. They wanted to help heal the very wounds they had tried to inflict, to use their intimate knowledge of the dark not to serve it but to protect the light from it. Their defection was the Guardians' most powerful victory yet, proving that the most formidable force in the universe is not a weapon, but a story that connects one heart to another. The Starfall's primary sensor array, a gift from the Nexus capable of mapping the subtle tremors of spacetime itself, began registering an anomaly that defied every known cosmological model. It wasn't within the reborn universe, nor was it one of the lingering echoes. This signal originated from beyond the very boundary of known existence, a region the databases marked only as pre-creation void. The data stream was a chaotic scream of contradictory physics, a signature of pure chaos that somehow felt familiar. As Aris studied the horrifyingly complex readouts, a cold dread settled in her stomach. The energy signature, though orders of magnitude more vast and complex, contained a disturbing harmonic resonance with the Entropy Being's power. It was like comparing a single, sad note to a destructive, universe-spanning symphony. Her mind raced, connecting fragments of the being's final, anguished confession. I was the first, and I will be the last. I have seen the entirety of the cosmic story. The words took on a new, sinister meaning. What if its solitude wasn't just a tragic condition, but an engineered state? What if its despair wasn't a natural conclusion, but a carefully cultivated weapon? The pieces fell into a terrifying new picture. The Entropy Being, in all its ancient, terrible power, might not have been the architect of the unmaking. It could have been merely the instrument, a pawn in a game played on a board larger than a single universe. What if it was just a symptom, she whispered to the silent bridge, and not the disease? The implications were staggering, redefining their entire understanding of the catastrophe they had barely survived. Their victory over the lonely star and the Wardens now felt like winning a single battle in a war they hadn't even known was being waged. The Guardians of the Light had been founded to tend a healing garden, but this new threat suggested they might need to become sentinels on a wall against an invading darkness from outside reality itself. An emergency council was convened, and the decision was unanimous. They had to investigate. An expedition was prepared not as a mission of exploration, but as a desperate reconnaissance into the abyss. As the Starfall, now reinforced with Nexus-derived quantum shielding and escorted by a small flotilla of former Warden vessels turned penitent allies, made its final preparations to cross the threshold into the unknown, Aris stood on the observation deck. She watched the soft, steady light from 100 nearby stars, each one a testament to their past struggle and hard-won hope. They had learned so much about the universe, about compassion, about the incredible resilience of life. They had learned to heal cosmic scars and communicate with orphaned emotions. But gazing into the incomprehensible blackness of the pre-creation void on the main viewer, she felt the weight of their ignorance more than ever. They were a species that had just relearned how to light a candle, and they were about to sail into a hurricane that could snuff out suns. With a final, steadying breath, she gave the order. The fleet's jump drives engaged, not with the familiar hum of faster-than-light travel, but with a wrenching, silent tear in the fabric of everything they knew. The journey into the absolute abyss had begun. The transition was not a jump but an unraveling, a sensation of the ship's very atoms being disassembled and threaded through an impossible needle of fractured physics. For a terrifying moment, there was no ship, no crew, only a cacophony of disparate consciousnesses adrift in a sea of screaming non-logic. Then reality snapped back into a new, terrifying focus. The Starfall hung motionless in a space that defied all known descriptors. There was no up or down, no stars, no nebulas. Instead, the void was a kaleidoscopic tapestry of shifting geometries and light that seemed to originate from nowhere and everywhere at once. This was the boundary of their universe, and it was cracked. Before them, the fracture hung in the non-space, a jagged, shimmering wound in the fabric of space-time itself, pulsing with an energy that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. It was not an empty blackness, but a window into a realm of swirling, chaotic luminescence, a place where the laws of physics were merely suggestions. The sensor arrays, designed by the Nexus to perceive the deepest layers of reality, could only return a stream of paradoxes and errors. The fracture wasn't just a tear, it was a gateway. And from its luminous depths, forms began to emerge. They were not creatures of matter. They were beings of pure, structured energy, their bodies appearing as intricate, shifting constellations of light that moved with a silent, terrifying grace. They had no faces, no limbs, yet their presence radiated an intelligence so vast and ancient it made the Nexus feel like a child's toy. One of them moved forward, and a voice, calm and devoid of any biological warmth, resonated directly within the minds of the crew. "You have journeyed far to witness our work," it intoned, the words feeling like cold equations being written onto their souls. "We are the architects. And your universe was a flawed design." Aris, her heart hammering against her ribs, found her voice. "The unmaking, the erased stars, that was you." "A correction," the being replied, its light patterns shifting slightly. "It was a simplification, an optimization. The cosmos you knew was grotesquely overpopulated with stellar bodies. A chaotic, wasteful explosion of energy that threatened the structural integrity of the multiversal substrate. We pruned it. We introduced an element of elegant silence to a cacophonous symphony." The statement was delivered not with malice, but with the dispassionate certainty of a gardener pulling weeds to save a garden. Horror washed over Aris, colder than the void outside. This was not a force of nature or a being driven mad by loneliness. This was a calculated, philosophical decision made by entities who saw entire galaxies as inconvenient clutter. "You call it elegance," she said, her voice trembling not with fear now, but with a rising, furious passion. "We call it genocide. You didn't just simplify a design, you erased countless worlds, uncountable lives, and an infinity of potential. You didn't prune a garden, you salted the earth, the energy being remained impassive. Life is a statistically probable, yet ultimately insignificant, byproduct of energy-matter interaction. Its loss is a negligible variable in the equation of cosmic harmony. Complexity is instability, diversity is disorder. Our function is to impose a sustainable order upon the chaos of creation." This ignited a fire in Aris. She stepped forward as if she could physically confront the constellation of light. "Negligible disorder," she argued, her words pouring out, fueled by everything she had witnessed and fought for. "Is a symphony just disordered noise because it has more than one note? Is a forest flawed because it has more than one type of tree? Your sustainable order is a sterile, silent museum. True strength isn't in simplicity, but in resilience. And resilience is born from diversity, from complexity, from the constant, beautiful struggle to adapt and thrive." The being you used as your instrument, the first star, it wasn't a tool, it was a victim of your philosophy. Its loneliness was a product of the silence you worship. She poured the entirety of her experience into her argument, transmitting not just words, but the emotional resonance the Nexus had granted her, the searing joy of stellar birth, the profound grief of the echoes, the resilient hope of the crystalline world that learned to live in a gentler light, and the redeeming sacrifice of the ancient star. She showed them that the universe wasn't an equation to be balanced, but a story to be told, and that every erased star was a lost paragraph, every lost world a forgotten character. For a long, agonizing moment, there was only the silent hum of the energy beings, their luminous forms flickering as they processed this emotional, illogical data stream. The debate hung in the balance, a clash not of weapons but of fundamental truths. The fate of all existence depended on whether these architects could comprehend a value system not based on efficiency and order. Finally, the lead being spoke again, its tone still cool, but now carrying a faint, almost imperceptible note of curiosity. Your perspective is anomalous. It is rooted in transient, biological imperatives that we have long since evolved beyond. However, the passion of your defense and the complexity of your experiences are data points we had not fully weighted. The architect seemed to consult with the others in a flash of silent, light-based communication. We will stay our process of further simplification. We will observe you and the civilization you represent will become a live experiment. Prove that this resilience you speak of is not merely a precursor to greater chaos. Demonstrate that complexity yields a stability we have failed to calculate. You have been granted a stay of execution, not a pardon. The fate of your universe now rests on your ability to convince us that we were wrong. The challenge laid before them was both terrifying and sublime, to create from the laws of physics itself a demonstration that would satisfy the cold logic of gods. The energy beings, the architects, did not want a weapon or a speech. They demanded a cosmic-scale argument, a stellar event that proved light and darkness were not opposing forces to be managed, but complementary partners in a sustainable dance. The fate of all existence hinged on this single, silent performance. Aris gathered her team, their minds still reeling from the encounter at the edge of reality. They had no blueprints for such a thing. How do you argue with entities who see a supernova as inefficient and a nebula as clutter? The answer, they realized, was not to fight their philosophy, but to speak its language, the language of perfect, elegant balance. They pored over the Nexus archives, not for weapons, but for cosmic poetry. They needed a system where creation and dissolution were locked in an eternal, stable embrace, where nothing was wasted and nothing was permanent. The concept they finally designed was a masterpiece of astrophysical engineering, a binary system comprising a pulsar and a black hole. This was no random pairing. They chose a rapidly spinning pulsar, a neutron star, that emits a relentless, precise beacon of radiation from its magnetic poles, a metronome of pure, predictable energy. Its partner would be a stellar mass black hole, a sphere of perfect darkness whose immense gravity creates a boundary beyond which even light cannot escape. The genius of their design was in the choreography. They calculated an orbit so precise that the pulsar's intense beams would periodically sweep across the black hole's event horizon. At that exact moment, a fraction of the light would be captured and consumed, but another fraction would be bent and lensed by the immense gravity, creating a magnificent, predictable halo of energy around the point of nothingness. It would be a visual and energetic sonnet about limitation and potential, a demonstration that the black hole's darkness did not extinguish the pulsar's light, but gave it a new form and purpose, defining its existence and making its light visible across the galaxy in a way it never could be alone. Using gravitational tugs and controlled mass injections, the Guardian fleet worked for weeks, playing with the fabric of spacetime itself to sculpt their argument into being. When the final adjustment was made, they stepped back. The architects observed in absolute silence. There, in the void, their creation breathed. The pulsar spun, its twin lances of radiation cutting through the dark with unwavering regularity. As it swung around its invisible partner, those beams grazed the event horizon. And just as predicted, a brilliant Einstein ring of lensed light flared into existence, a perfect crown of fire encircling the absolute blackness at the system's heart. For one breathtaking moment, light and darkness were not at war. They were partners in a breathtaking, stable dance, a symbiotic relationship where each gave the other meaning. The voice of the lead architect finally resonated in their minds, its usual cold certainty now tempered with what could almost be mistaken for awe. The equation is elegant. You have not merely preserved chaos within order. You have demonstrated that chaos provides a necessary boundary that gives order its form and function. They are not opponents, they are partners. The resonance is sustainable. You have passed our test. The collective presence of the energy beings seemed to soften, their luminous forms withdrawing from the fracture in reality. We will not interfere further. This universe is now under your stewardship. Do not let the equation fall out of balance. As the last of the architects vanished back into the pre-creation void, the fracture sealed itself, leaving behind only the undisturbed starfield. The victory was absolute, the universe's autonomy finally and truly secured. Yet, as the crew's cheers slowly subsided, a profound and solemn quiet settled over the bridge. Aris looked at the beautiful, terrible binary system they had created, a permanent monument to their argument and a constant reminder of the responsibility they now bore. They had won not just peace but probation. The universe was theirs to tend, and the price of failure was total. The Guardians of the Light had passed their greatest test, and in doing so, had accepted a duty that would last until the last star finally died. With the architect's chilling judgment finally lifted, a new chapter dawned for the Guardians of the Light. The frantic, desperate energy of crisis gave way to the methodical, determined work of long-term stewardship. Their mandate expanded from a single ship's crew to a sprawling, interstellar organization. Using the advanced quantum gate technology gifted by the Nexus, Guardian outposts began to bloom like silver flowers in the soil of distant galaxies. These were not military bastions, but centers of learning and diplomacy designed to blend with their environments. On an oceanic world, the outpost was a submerged crystalline dome that hummed with the songs of the native leviathans. In a system of gas giants, a flotilla of graceful, solar sail-equipped stations drifted in the upper atmospheres, harvesting exotic particles and studying the weather patterns. Each outpost was a testament to a new principle, that protection does not require domination, but rather a harmonious integration with the cosmos it serves. At the heart of this expansion was Aris Thorne, who found her role evolving from a starship captain into something far more significant. She became a living symbol, a bridge between a traumatized past and a hopeful future. Her name was whispered on worlds she would never visit, often accompanied by the story of the child on Viridia or the crystalline premier who feared the sun. She did not command empires, she forged alliances, traveling to nascent councils of alien races whose cultures had been reborn from the long night. Her power lay not in threats but in a profound and genuine empathy. She would sit in silent meditation with telepathic fungi colonies for days, or participate in the complex, water-dancing rituals of the amphibious Caithar, always listening before she ever spoke. We are not just protectors, she would tell every new species they encountered, her words translated into 1,000 different forms of communication. We are storytellers, ensuring the tale of the starless universe is never forgotten. We remember the silence so that we may better appreciate the music. This commitment to memory became the cornerstone of the new era. The Guardian's greatest undertaking was the construction of the Grand Archive, a vast, moon-sized repository built in a neutral system. Its design was intentionally non-threatening, with open, welcoming arches and halls filled with soft, natural light. Here, they gathered not weapons, but stories. They collected the final transmissions from civilizations that had blinked out during the unmaking, the haunting art and music created during the long night, and the scientific data from the echoes and the Entropy Being itself. Crucially, they also preserved the full, unvarnished history of the Wardens and Kale's fanaticism, ensuring that the seductive allure of despair would be understood and guarded against for all time. The archive stood as a promise that the universe would learn from its scars, not hide them, and so the cosmos began to feel whole again. The sky was once more a comfort, not a curse. Trade routes glittered between stars, and the air on 1,000 worlds hummed with the sounds of life rediscovering its joy. Yet, for those who had lived through the darkness, this wholeness carried a different weight. It was not the innocent, assumed wholeness of before, but a conscious, hard-won fragility. Every star was now appreciated not just for its light, but for its profound vulnerability. The universe felt like a precious, blown glass sculpture, miraculously repaired after being shattered, still beautiful, still functional, but forever marked by the delicate tracery of its breaks, a constant reminder of how easily it could be lost. This collective, quiet awareness became the true shield against the dark, a vigilance born not from fear, but from a deep and abiding gratitude. A full cycle of seasons had passed across the reclaimed Earth since the Starfall's return, a year measured not just in orbital periods, but in the slow, steady healing of a collective trauma. On the anniversary of the restoration, Aris found her ship drawn back to the coordinates that were seared into her memory, the place where the universe had been reborn and where a friend had been lost. The Starfall drifted to a halt in a region of space that was now unremarkable, its once chaotic energies calmed into a serene, star-dusted peace. She half expected to find only empty void, a silent monument to an act too vast for any physical marker. But as the ship's powerful observational arrays focused on the precise point of Ellie's sacrifice, the main viewer resolved an image that made her breath catch in her throat. Hanging in the dark, directly where the heart of the void had once pulsed with anti-light, was a delicate, shimmering nebula. It was not like the great, chaotic clouds of star-forming regions. This was something far more intricate and purposeful. Its particles seemed to be held in a perfect, gentle suspension, catching the light from the surrounding newborn stars and reflecting it in a soft, perpetual glow. The formation was unmistakable in its shape, a human heart rendered in ethereal, cosmic dust and energy, its form so precise it could not possibly be a natural accident. At its very center, a single, brilliant point of light shone with a steady, warm radiance, an anchor of stability within the beautiful haze. Tears welled in Aris's eyes, but they were tears of a profound, healing wonder, not of the old, raw grief. A soft, incredulous laugh escaped her lips. He didn't just help make the stars, she whispered to the empty bridge, her voice filled with awe. He became one himself. The truth of it resonated through her entire being. Ellie's essence, the very core of his compassionate and courageous soul, had not been erased or consumed. It had been transmuted, woven directly into the fabric of the cosmos he had died to save, becoming a permanent part of its story. This was not a ghost or an echo. It was a new fact of the universe, as real and lasting as gravity. She knew instantly what it had to be called. With a voice that carried the full weight of her authority as a Guardian founder, she made the declaration, ensuring it was logged into every galactic database and navigation chart. From this day forward, this formation is to be known as Ellie's Heart. May it serve as a beacon for all who travel the deep dark, a reminder that our greatest power has never been our engines or our weapons, but our capacity for selfless love and our courage to hope. The name fit perfectly, a testament to both the man and the act. Almost immediately, the designation was acknowledged and confirmed by the Nexus itself, the curator's voice offering a simple, profound addition, a fitting tribute. A true constant in the celestial sea. As the Starfall slowly orbited the gentle glow of the nebula, Aris felt a sense of peace settle over her that she had not known since before the stars had vanished. The gnawing void of Ellie's absence was still there, but it was no longer a cold emptiness. It was now filled with the warm, steady light of his legacy. He was not gone, he was everywhere, in every star that shone its light on a waking world, in every child who looked up at a sky they would never have to fear, in the very principles that now guided the guardians of the light. That was where Ellie lived on. His sacrifice had been the spark, but his memory had become the enduring flame. The work of protecting the light would continue forever, but in that moment, watching the soft pulse of Ellie's heart against the infinite dark, Aris knew with absolute certainty that the universe was and would always be held in good hands. The command deck of the Silver Tusk, the newest and most advanced vessel in the Guardian fleet, was a symphony of quiet activity, its sweeping viewports offering a breathtaking panorama of a spiral arm newly ablaze with the light of 1,000 thriving systems. Aris Thorne stood before the main assembly, her figure framed not by the cold void of the past, but by the vibrant, living proof of their future. The crew before her, a diverse tapestry of species from 100 different worlds who had once known only darkness, now looked to her not with the desperate hope of survivors, but with the steady resolve of stewards. "The stars are back," she began, her voice carrying the quiet weight of hard-won truth, a statement of fact that still held the power to awe. "The great silence has been broken, and the symphony of creation plays once more. But our work, the most critical work, is never truly done." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the faces in the room, seeing in each the reflection of the struggles they had all endured. "This light, this beautiful, fragile network of life, it isn't a permanent state. It is a choice we must make every single day. Our mission now, and for all the generations that will follow us, is to ensure that choice is always made with curiosity, with compassion, and above all, with courage." She turned slightly, a gesture that invited everyone to look with her at the star-dusted vista beyond the glass. "We are the first civilization in the known history of the cosmos to be granted this perspective. We are the only ones who have seen the absolute, chilling alternative. We have stared into the heart of a universe without stars, felt its emptiness in our bones, and we fought with everything we had to bring the light back. That memory, that profound understanding of loss, must be the bedrock of everything we do. Let it be the compass that guides our curiosity away from cold exploitation and toward wonder. Let it be the lens that focuses our compassion, reminding us that every world, every culture, no matter how strange, has a right to find its own path within the light. And let it be the fire that fuels our courage when we face the unknown, because we know precisely what is worth protecting." A silent vow passed through the assembly, as tangible as any spoken oath. It was a commitment etched not on stone, but on the soul of their fledgling alliance. They would not be a police force imposing a rigid order. They would be gardeners tending to the incredible, diverse ecosystem of existence, understanding that a garden's strength lies in its variety, not its uniformity. They would be archivists ensuring the story of the great unmaking was never forgotten, so its lessons could protect the future, and they would be sentinels forever watching the delicate boundaries of their reality, not with paranoia but with a loving vigilance. The cosmos outside teemed with potential, with new mysteries waiting in the nebulae and around the gravity wells of newborn planets. They were ready for them, not with fear, but with the quiet confidence of those who have already faced the end of everything and had chosen instead to build a beginning. The universe shines once more, each star a testament to resilience and redemption, a brilliant, hard-worn tapestry of light against the infinite dark. But this is not the same cosmos as before. The silence of the great unmaking, though broken, left behind a profound and universal understanding, a collective memory etched into the fabric of space-time itself. Every civilization that now looks up at the night sky does so with the quiet knowledge of how fragile that beauty truly is, an awareness that does not breed fear, but a deeper, more tender appreciation. The light is no longer taken for granted. It is cherished as the miracle it is, a daily gift paid for with unimaginable sacrifice. This is the true legacy of the restoration, not just the return of the stars, but the birth of a cosmic gratitude. Aris Thorne's personal journey mirrors this greater healing. She stands on the bridge of her ship, no longer the desperate captain racing toward a faint signal in the void, but a steady founder gazing upon a universe saved. Her path from the crushing despair of that first starless night to the unwavering hope she embodies today has forged something new in the heart of galactic civilization, a permanent ethos of stewardship. She understands that their victory was not a final destination, but the foundation upon which an eternal vigilance must be built. The Guardians of the Light are the living embodiment of this principle, a promise to the past and a vow to the future that the darkness will never again be allowed to creep in unchallenged. In what becomes her final official transmission, broadcast across the networked worlds and outposts, her voice carries not the weight of command, but the warm, inviting tone of a shared purpose. "We are the Guardians of the Light," she says, the simple declaration echoing through halls of learning, on bustling alien thoroughfares, and in the quiet cockpits of scout ships charting unknown nebulae. And our story is just beginning. Our duty is not to rule, but to remember, to tend this garden of stars with curiosity and compassion, to listen as intently as we observe, and to understand that our strength lies not in uniformity, but in the magnificent, chaotic, beautiful diversity of life that flourishes beneath this light. We stand together not in the shadow of fear, but in the glow of a second chance. As her words fade, the gentle, familiar hum of a starship's engines rises in the silence, a sound that has become the heartbeat of this new era. It is the sound of purpose, of a vessel embarking on yet another mission, not one of desperate salvation, but of peaceful exploration and quiet watchfulness. The ship arcs away from a thriving starbase, its navigation lights winking against the velvet black, heading toward the next mystery, the next fledgling world, the next uncharted frontier. It leaves behind not an ending, but an open page, inviting all who witness it to imagine the next chapter in this vast, star-filled saga. A story forever illuminated by the memory of what was almost lost and inspired by the boundless potential of what is yet